Hello and welcome back. I'm Natalie MacDonald and you're watching Sydney Direct, where we bring you exclusive interviews on some of the hot financial topics impacting Australian markets. Well, data-wise, it's been a pretty strong week for the Australian economy, so I caught up with Katrina L at Moody's Analytics to find out a little bit more. Katrina L, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to Dukescopy TV once again. Always a pleasure to receive your insights.
Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. So we're going to do a little bit of a wrap on some of what was quite a hefty Oz data week, starting with that RBA rate decision on Tuesday. The RBA opted to keep interest rates on hold, a move sort of largely expected, really. But what we're kind of looking for now is when we can expect them to actually act once more.
Well, we actually think that the Reserve Bank of Australia is going to keep rates steady for the rest of the year. We think after delivering 50 basis points earlier in the year, we think that they're going to really hold off and see how the rest of the data flows. And we think that they're really going to be relying on the lower Australian dollar to be improving the non-mining sectors as mining investment drags. So the focus for them is really going to be on the lower Australian dollar going forward.
Now moving on to the Oz employment figures that we saw. Now unemployment did actually tip up to 6%. Again, sort of a largely expected move. Full-time jobs took a rise, but we've seen a real dip in part-time employment. Could that be that these figures are really sort of switching over, or is that perhaps a touch too optimistic?
It's probably a little bit too early to tell, because what we really need to keep in mind with the employment data is that the seasonally adjusted numbers are very volatile month to month. But looking at the trend, what we're seeing is that there's going to be upward pressure remaining on that 6% unemployment rate as mining investment continues to drag, and those non-mining sectors like education, tourism, retail spending are really struggling to pick up the slack.
Now, the RBA have noted, somewhat controversially, that housing prices, well, they see it anyway, as being 30% undervalued. Again, given some of the prices that we are seeing, potentially an argument there to be had.
Well, what we are seeing is that Sydney house prices are growing very strongly. They're up 16% in June, whereas the rest of the states, probably excluding Melbourne, are slightly higher or flat at best. But what we are expecting going forward is that as the financial regulators' measures really start to filter through, and they've been targeting investor participation in the housing market, particularly in Sydney. And once that filters through, we should start to see house prices cool and won't see these strong growth rates and these unsustainable levels that we have been.
Now, finishing up on the Aussie dollar, and this week the local currency resisted a dip, really, despite that drop in iron ore prices. What is stopping the Aussie dollar from taking that lower path?
It's quite a point of frustration, particularly for the Reserve Bank of Australia at the moment. And what I think is really driving it is the Federal Reserve. We're seeing a lot of umming and ahhing from them on when they're going to actually start hiking rates. And so we think that when they actually do, begin this process that they've been talking about for months, we think that that really will take the shine off the Australian dollar. And we're looking at around September for that to take place. And around then, probably a little bit before, we should see the Australian dollar depreciate about another 5% against the greenback, bringing it roughly to around 72 cents against the dollar.
Katrina, thanks so much for your time today. Always a pleasure to catch up with you.
Thank you.
That's all we've got time for right now. Always a pleasure, though, to catch up with Katrina L at Moody's Analytics. I'll be back with plenty more exclusive interviews for you, but for now, it's goodbye.